there's a rule on the list that I keep coming back to. Number 5. If you hear your name spoken from the tree line, do not answer, do not look, do not move until it stops. I remember reading that one in the cabin on my first night, sitting under the yellow glow of a single lamp, the forest pressing dark against every window. I remember thinking it was the kind of thing someone wrote as a joke, regional folklore dressed up as safety instructions. I even smiled. I'm not smiling now. It's me back up. 3 weeks ago, I rented a cabin in the Cascade Mountains for what I told myself was a creative reset. The truth was lonelier than that. I'd lost my dad 6 months earlier. Sudden heart attack, no warning, nothing to prepare you. And I'd spent the months after his death doing everything except sitting still long enough to feel it, working twice as hard, taking every freelance assignment I could get, filling every quiet hour with noise. My therapist said I needed solitude, real solitude. No city hum, no notifications, no easy escape routes. She said grief that isn't felt becomes something else, something heavier. I didn't fully understand what she meant until I was standing in that cabin at 2 in the morning with something outside that already knew my name. I found the rental through an obscure travel forum. One post, no photos, just a sparse description. Remote Cascade cabin, full week minimum, no refunds, contact Marin directly. A phone number, no website. I almost kept scrolling, but the price was absurdly low. The location was exactly the kind of deep wilderness I'd been craving, and something about the bluntness of that listing felt honest to me. Like whoever wrote it wasn't trying to sell anything. Marin answered on the second ring. Short sentences, direct. She told me the road washed out every spring and she wasn't responsible for delays. She told me there was no cell service past the ranger station. She told me the nearest town was 40 minutes down the mountain and they closed the hardware store at noon on Saturdays. Practical stuff, the kind of details that made the place feel real. Before she hung up, she said, "I'll leave something for you on the kitchen table. Read it the same night you arrive. All of it." I asked her what it was. She said, "Instructions." The drive took 9 hours. The last 20 miles were unpaved, the kind of road that felt less like something built and more like something worn down by reluctant use over time. My headlights caught nothing but tree trunks and the occasional flash of a deer's eyes before it vanished back into the dark. I lost the radio signal somewhere around mile 6, lost my GPS shortly after. I'd written Marin's directions on a notepad, left at the double-trunk pine, right where the road forks at the boulder with orange lichen, follow the sound of the creek. I found the creek. I followed it. The cabin appeared. It was smaller than I expected and somehow more solid looking for that, like it had been built to survive something specific. Heavy timbers, a low roofline, deep-set windows that looked almost reluctant to let light in. A covered porch ran along the front. Firewood was stacked under a tarp to the left. There was no welcome mat. There were no decorative touches of any kind. This was not a place designed to charm you. The key was in the lockbox Marin had described. Inside, the cabin was clean and functional. A stone fireplace, a kitchen with basic supplies she'd left, a loft with a bed overlooking the main room. Everything smelled like pine resin and cold air. On the kitchen table, exactly where she'd said, was a laminated sheet of paper, typed 12-point font. The kind of formatting you use when you want something to be read clearly, without distraction. Poured myself a glass of water and sat down. The top of the page said, "Cabin rules. Read fully before your first night." And then I read them, all 8. Rule 1. Do not go past the split cedar at the eastern tree line after sundown. If you are already past it when the sun sets, do not run. Walk back slowly and do not look behind you. Rule 2. Keep all window coverings closed between 11 p.m. and 4 a.m. If you hear tapping on the glass during those hours, it is not an animal. Rule 3. There is a structure in the woods approximately 200 yards northeast of the cabin. You will not find it on any map. Do not approach it. Do not photograph it. If you find yourself drawn toward it for reasons you can't explain, go back inside and start a fire. Rule 4. Do not leave dishes with food residue outside. Do not leave boots outside. Do not leave anything outside that was on your body during the day. Rule 5. If you hear your name spoken from the tree line, do not answer. Do not look. Do not move until it stops. Rule 6. The creek to the west runs clear. Do not drink from the pool where it goes still. Do not look at your reflection in that water. Rule 7. If you wake up and the fire has gone out, relight it before you do anything else, before you use the bathroom, before you check the time, before anything. Rule 8. If you find something inside the cabin that was not here when you arrived, something you do not recognize and cannot explain, place it outside the front door before midnight. Do not keep it. Do not photograph it. Do not try to understand it. I read the whole list twice. Then I set the paper down and looked around the cabin, at the closed curtains over the dark windows, at the fire I'd lit when I arrived. Still going, still fine. At my reflection in the black surface of the window I'd missed covering, I got up and covered it. I told myself I was just being respectful of someone else's space, following the rules of the rental the way you'd follow any house rules. Don't smoke inside. Don't take the kayak out in a storm. Cover the windows after 11. Simple enough, but Rule 5 had gotten under my skin in a way I couldn't shake. Not because it was the strangest one. Rule 3 was stranger, but because of the specificity. Do not move until it stops. That detail, the until, implied that it would stop, that there was an end to it if you just waited. That suggested experience, someone who had been through it and come out the other side and timed how long it lasted. That's not the kind of detail you invent for atmosphere. I didn't sleep well that first night. The forest was not quiet the way city people imagine forests are quiet. It was loud in a layered way, wind moving through different heights of trees at different speeds, something small moving fast through the underbrush, the creek audible, in certain silences, and underneath all of it, something I could only describe as pressure, like the air itself was paying attention. By the second morning, I'd rationalized most of it. Old cabin, thin walls, unfamiliar sounds. The rules were the creative project of a cautious property manager who'd watched too many horror movies or grown up on local ghost stories. The structure in the woods, probably an old hunting blind or the remains of an outbuilding. Nothing more. I went for a walk. I told myself I was going west, toward the clear creek, and I was, at first. But the woods, northeast of the cabin, had a quality I can only describe as interesting. Not threatening, not yet, just magnetic. The trees were older in that direction, the undergrowth thinner. The light came through differently, slanted and yellow in a way that made everything look like the background of an old painting. I found the structure at 170 yards, not 200, closer than the rule had suggested, which bothered me in a small way I filed away and ignored. It was a ring of stones, not arranged casually. This was deliberate, precise, the kind of construction that takes time and intention and an understanding of geometry. 9 stones in a near-perfect circle, each one chest height, each one dark with moisture even in the dry air. The ground inside the circle was bare earth, no pine needles, no moss, nothing. Just packed dirt, the color of ash, and carved into each stone, near the base, was the same symbol. A vertical line with 3 horizontal marks crossing it. Simple, ancient-looking. The kind of mark that could mean 100 things, or could mean one thing very specifically, and I had no way of knowing which. I stood at the edge of the circle for a long time. I didn't go in. Something about the bare earth stopped me. Not fear, exactly. More like the feeling you get standing at the edge of a drop you can't see the bottom of. Your body knowing something your brain is still catching up to. I went back to the cabin and relit the fire even though it wasn't cold. That night, night 2, I woke up at 2:47 a.m. No noise, no dream I could remember. Just suddenly awake, completely alert, sitting upright in the loft with my heart already moving fast. The fire was out. I stared at it for a second. Then, I remembered Rule 7. Relight it before you do anything else. And I don't know if it was the isolation or the sleeplessness or some older animal part of my brain overriding the rational one. But I climbed down from the loft without reaching for my phone, without going to the bathroom, and I rebuilt the fire from the coals still glowing faintly orange in the grate, while I was crouched in front of the fireplace, watching the new flame. Take hold, I heard it. My name. From the tree line, not loud, not close, just audible, coming from somewhere northeast, in the direction of the stone ring. A voice I didn't recognize, but that somehow carried the specific rhythm of someone who knew me. The particular cadence of my name as someone who knew me would say it, not shouted, almost conversational. I didn't move. I want you to understand how hard that was. Every instinct said, turn around, look, respond. It is almost physically painful to hear your name and not react. It goes against something deep. But I stayed crouched by the fire with my eyes on the row, flame, and I counted seconds, and I did not look toward the window. It said my name 4 more times. Then it stopped. The silence afterward was a different kind of silence than before. I sat by that fire until 4:30 a.m. with every light in the cabin on, and I thought about the other rules in a different way than I had before, not as folklore, as information, as a set of instructions compiled by people who had been through things in this place that I was now beginning to understand were not imaginary. In the morning, I drove down to the nearest town, found it on the paper map I'd brought because Marin had warned me about the GPS, small place called Kessler, barely a gas station and a post office and a diner with a handwritten specials board. I ordered coffee and eggs and asked the woman behind the counter how long she'd lived there. 30 years, she said. I asked if she knew anything about the cabin up on the eastern ridge. I described the location. Her expression didn't change the way you'd expect someone's expression to change when they're scared. It changed the way it changes when they've already processed the fear and come out the other side into something quieter. She refilled my coffee without being asked. She said, "The cabin has been there longer than anyone in Kessler can remember." She said Marin's family had managed the property for 3 generations. She said the stone ring in the woods was older than any structure in the county. She'd heard a professor from the university came out once to study it and left after one night. She said she didn't know anyone personally who'd had something happen to them, but she knew of people who'd stayed there and never came back to town afterward. Not missing, just gone from the area, like they'd packed up quietly and driven away, and that was that. I asked her if she thought the rules were real. She looked at me for a moment. Then she said, "Marin doesn't write those rules down to be dramatic. She writes them down so she doesn't have to make phone calls." I paid the check and drove back up the mountain. I followed every rule for the remaining 5 days. I kept the curtains closed. I relit the fire every morning first thing. I avoided the pool in the creek where the water went still and flat, and when I walked near it once by accident and nearly looked down, I turned away with a speed that surprised even me. I stayed inside after 11. I walked in the woods only in daylight and only west or south, never northeast. On the last morning, I packed my car slowly, deliberately. I took one last cup of coffee on the porch and looked at the tree line. Whatever was out there, whatever waited in the ring of carved stones in the old-growth woods, it had not reached me. Whether that was because of the rules or because of something I had or hadn't done, or just because it hadn't decided to, I genuinely didn't know. I left the laminated rules sheet on the kitchen table for the next person. Before I left, I added a line at the bottom in pen. It wasn't part of the original 8 rules, but I'd lived it, and it felt true. Rule 9. Whatever you came here running from, it already knows you brought it with you. The woods just have a way of making you look at it. I thought about my dad the whole drive down, the way the mountain silence had done what 9 months of not stopping hadn't managed to do. It had made me hold still long enough to feel it. Maybe that was the whole point. Or maybe the stone ring and the voice in the dark and the rules written by people who'd come before me. Maybe all of that was something else entirely. Something I don't have clean language for yet. And the grief was just what I happened to be carrying when I walked into a place that strips every pretense away and leaves you with whatever is most essentially true about yourself. I don't know. What I know is that I followed the rules, and I came home. And some nights, in the particular quiet just before I fall asleep, in that narrow space between waking and not, I still hear the forest, I hear the creek, and I hear, just barely, at the outer edge of something I refuse to call hearing, the slow and patient sound of my own name. I don't answer it. I don't think I ever will.